The Montreal Canadiens have 5 games left. Could they be the final games for Brendan Gallagher in a Habs uniform? Might he find himself traded to the LA Kings this offseason? We will discuss that in detail. Plus, we also have news on the NHL draft lottery. We have updates from Pittsburgh Penguins, Hockey Canada, a few milestones. Evander Kane has started the grievance process against the San Jose Sharks for his contract that was terminated. Plus, we also have some NHL trade talk around the Philadephia Flyers and Minnesota Wild. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we really have a ton of information to cover here today. First up, we have a quick signing in San Jose where they've signed a young goaltender, Strauss Mann, who gets a 1-year ELC. Due to his age, he completed a 4-year collegiate career through the University of Michigan and has since gone on to play a year in the SHL in Europe. Plus, he also had a chance to represent his country for Team USA at the Olympics this past Olympic Games since the NHL players were not participating. So obviously there's hope that he'll be able to turn himself into an NHL caliber goaltender. I do expect there to likely be some possible turnover in the goaltending department within San Jose this offseason. So we will see where the opportunity takes him from there. Now, as I mentioned, we also got confirmation today on the NHL draft lottery. We can now confirm that's going to be held the evening of May the 10th. So that's not all that far away from right now. Obviously, all the non-playoff teams will be in the lottery and trying to see if they're going to be lucky enough to pick first overall. Now, a couple of quick things here. I'll show you a graphic on the screen with the odds, I guess, for all the non-teams to the chances of winning. Of course, keep in mind you can only move up a maximum of 10 spots. So clearly the few bottom teams can't go all the way to number 1. But if one of those teams with really low odds, they're like 12, 13, 14, something like that, were drawn and they were the winner, they would move up the 10 spots, and a couple teams that were in those few spots based on the standings would stay put. So obviously there is that. Of course, you also have to keep in mind that there's a rule in place now that you cannot win more than 2 times in a 5-year span. So obviously all that will be factored in. As you can see with the odds here on the screen, the maximum odds for the team that's at the bottom of the standings is still only 18.5% for a first place overall draw. So certainly the odds are against all of these teams more than they're for them. It's going to be interesting. Of course, I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Leave a comment down below which team you think needs the first overall pick more than anybody else. And of course, stay tuned to the channel. We'll be doing a few more draft lottery simulations before we hit May 10th and we know the exact drafting order, at least for the first half of the first round until the playoffs are complete. Now, as I mentioned, we also have news out of Hockey Canada today. We got word that Tom Rennie, the longtime CEO, is going to be retiring effective July the 1st. So we also confirmed that Scott Smith will be taking over that role, who's the current CEO and president right now, Hockey Canada. He's been working under Tom Rennie for some time, so it should be a seamless transition. Not a big surprise. He's the chosen successor here for Tom Rennie. Of course, in case you're not aware, Scott Smith does originally hail from my home province here of New Brunswick, former executive for Hockey New Brunswick many moons ago. So certainly nice to see one of our local hockey people getting a big opportunity with Hockey Canada. Of course, one of his first big tasks will be determining a general manager for the upcoming 2024 World Cup of Hockey tournament. Of course, that tournament's not 100% officially confirmed just yet, but right now Hockey Canada is planning as if it is, because essentially between the league and the players and the part of the CBA negotiations, they want it to have, with the NHL not going to the Olympics, having another, international best on best tournament. So it's pretty much a given it's going to happen. It's just not completely finalized yet. So they're moving forward on the assumption it is for right now to make sure they're planned and prepared. It's expected Doug Armstrong likely gets that role as GM, given that he was named to be GM for the Olympics, but unfortunately never got to follow through on that since the NHL players did not end up going due to all the COVID and cancellation issues and everything the NHL ran into. And of course, as I mentioned, we have some interesting news out of the Pittsburgh Penguins organization today. They've announced that they're launching what they call an executive management program, and their first participant is going to be longtime female hockey player Amanda Kessel of the USA. Of course, she's had a pretty decorated career, solid hockey player in her own right, and she's obviously got a college degree from the University of Minnesota in sports management. And even though her playing days are not completely over, she made that clear that she's still going to continue to train and will still be playing some. So she's not completely retired by any means, but when she is ready to call it quits, she wants to make sure she has her career lined up for the next aspect of her hockey life, I guess. And obviously this program will be a big help to her. Since she has the education already, this program will allow her to basically work for the Penguins for 1 year and essentially almost get like a sort of like a co-op opportunity or an internship. Same sort of idea where you get to spend time in various aspects of the organization, learning lots of behind the scenes stuff to see where she might want to fit longer term. This program is kind of geared towards more of a focus on women and minorities to give them more of an opportunity within professional hockey. So certainly, I believe the first of its kind in professional sports. Great to see the Penguins be innovators in that aspect to create this such program, which is great. So she'll spend time with the actual management group. She'll spend time with the marketing department, communications, as well as the broadcast departments, learning all the different aspects of things and kind of getting things lined up and put her on a fast track to whether it be a role with Pittsburgh or elsewhere once her playing days are officially done. So great to see an opportunity for Amanda Kessel and terrific to see such a great program put together by the Penguins organization. Now, of course, as I mentioned as well, we also had a few key milestones reached here in the past day or two, including the Nashville Predators, which has its first ever 40-goal scorer in Matt Duchene. Of course, Duchene himself is hitting 40 goals for the very first time as well. So a career high for him and a career high for a player in a Preds uniform. Of course, Philip Forsberg may get there as well. So it might be interesting to see that they may go from never having any to having two in the same season. Of course, you remember Matt Duchene was available in the expansion draft last offseason to the Seattle Kraken, which he was not obviously selected, but still he had a really poor first year in Nashville. Things have not gone well, and it was not looking like his career was going to be bouncing back, but he's certainly proven everybody wrong this year. Fellow centerman Ryan Johansson's also been pretty solid and bouncing back as well, which has been a big reason why Nashville is in the playoff mix when a lot of us thought that might not happen based on how things went last season. So that's great to see. Another big milestone as well, Steven Stamkos certainly tied current head coach of the Habs and former Lightning legend Martin St. Louis with 953 points for his career. So that's the most on the all-time list within the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. So Stammer's next point will give him sole possession of that and be in the lead all by himself, which is going to happen here anytime. So certainly, a big milestone there for Steven Stamkos. He's not far away from 1,000 career points, and he's also, like I said, 1 point away from being the all-time leader all on his own. Of course, we also got some updates on Evander Kane. We know when the contract was terminated by the San Jose Sharks that was a bit of a messy divorce, and they certainly were fighting things in the appeal process, or the grievance you could call it, for Evander Kane is officially underway. They've already gone through a full day of a hearing, and a second day has been added because there's a whole bunch more information to be going through, I guess. The second date has not yet been confirmed. Obviously, likely going to be some time before we have a result. Could be weeks, could be a few months. It's really hard to say, but I would think that they're going to be pushing hard to have this situation completely resolved, just in case that there is an award here in Kane's favor. If there's going to be any kind of cap charge or anything that would impact San Jose's salary cap space moving forward, you would think they'd want to know that before the offseason gets into full swing here, so they can make their moves accordingly, knowing what they're working with. But of course, there's not exactly a guarantee. There's a lot of money on the line for Evander Kane, and like I said, cap space could be on the line to some degree for the Sharks. So it's probably going to be a while before we have a result. We might have more updates here once the second date is confirmed a little bit, but right now, not a lot to go on, just that they're heavily involved in the process for the time being. Now, as I mentioned, we have some NHL trade talk to take a look at here. More talk about the Minnesota Wild. I know we mentioned Kevin Fiala yesterday, between him and Matt Dumba being traded due to the cap crunch that the Wild are going to be facing from the buyouts for Suter and Parise, having such a big impact on the cap for the next couple of seasons. And, it might prove to be Dumba is the guy that goes, but there's a lot of talk on TSN Insider Trading talking about Kevin Fiala maybe being a target not only for the Ottawa Senators, who's been linked to in the past, but a few other teams that are currently rebuilding as well. I know Detroit was another team that was mentioned, and there was a few others too. So we very well could see that. I mean, there was already talk too about, Minnesota having interest in re-signing Marc-Andre Fleury. I know that was also discussed in the same segment, and I know goaltender Martin Biron, who was on the panel talking about it, basically said as much as they might have interest, he didn't see how it was remotely possible, which I totally agree with. Obviously, Fleury has also made public comments here in the past couple days as well, confirming that he does indeed plan to play beyond the current season. So whether or not that's in Minnesota or somewhere else, he said he's recently made a decision that he's still in good health and still really enjoys the game. So he wants to play longer. Not sure exactly how long, but at least one more season is all we know for the time being. So I know there's been talk about, potential return to Pittsburgh. I know Minnesota might have their interest, but they're going to have a hard enough time moving or keeping Kevin Fiala, and that might even prove to be impossible. Like I said, they were talking on the panel about this, how his price tag is going to be so high that it's going to prove to be extremely, extremely challenging. The relationship between Fiala and the franchise has already been a little bit shaky. He doesn't have the greatest relationship with head coach Dean Evason's, what some say. I know they mentioned that as well. Of course, Evason and Fiala also worked together previously at the American Hockey League level as well, and it's not a terrible relationship by the sounds of things, but it is not the greatest either. I think to some degree Fiala might feel like he could really maybe play better, and even hit more of a career high under a different coach. I'm not really sure. That's just the way they were making it sound. But either way, the Wild are going to be busy. Fiala's certainly going to be a key player to watch. Even though there's been talk about the Wild wanting to keep Fleury, it's pretty much unlikely, but at least we now know for sure that Fleury does want to keep playing. Now, there's also a bit of a situation, as appears, between the Philadelphia Flyers and Ryan Ellis, and there's not a lot of details here as of yet, but the fourthperiod.com was reporting earlier today that Ryan Ellis has not been around the team much at all, hasn't been seen or heard from in about 3 weeks, according to this article that was posted here today. We know that Ryan Ellis has been out injured substantially for like a big chunk of the season. He's only played a handful of games, and right at this point, a lot of people within the Flyers management and training crew don't even really know the full extent of the injuries or really what's exactly wrong. There's been some speculation that he might be contemplating getting another surgery, and some question if he even wants to be in the organization. There just seems to be a major disconnect based on what this article is saying. I guess we'll see what else comes from this here in the next little bit. What other Flyers media kind of gets a hold of the story. I know some are also doing some digging to find out what more they can see on this story, but it just seems to be bizarre that, like I said, he's really non-existent around the club at all. And it's to the point that most people don't seem to even know what's going on with him and if he even wants to be a Flyer. So, could we see Ryan Ellis traded this summer? I guess we can't rule it out, but the fact that he's barely played and has a lot of term and money left on his contract is probably going to be pretty difficult to do. But even if that doesn't happen because of the challenges it would present, you have to think that might have an impact on the future of Ivan Provorov. I mean, we've talked before about Provorov maybe being a member of the Flyers that likely could be traded, but there's a lot of people that said, well, they brought Ryan Ellison to be his partner. They really want to see how that's going to work before they really give up on this young defenseman. He's been there long enough. You think we know what he is by now, but he's had a lot of different partners, etc., etc., etc. But at this point, if Ryan Ellis isn't even going to possibly be there, if he doesn't want to be there, or he's not going to be healthy enough to play, or whatever the case is it worth, waiting around? So he could accelerate things on that blue line. There's bound to be a lot of things take place with the Flyers this offseason, but the whole Ryan Ellis situation and what it becomes will be interesting to follow. It's not really clear, and it's something that kind of came out of nowhere, in my opinion. Not something I expected to be hearing about right now. Now, there was also an article today from Stu Cowan in the Montreal Gazette talking about Brendan Gallagher and if this could be his final days in a Habs uniform. Obviously, we know Montreal has 5 games left. It's been a terrible season. They're heading for the draft lottery, 1 year removed from winning the Eastern Conference and heading to play in the Stanley Cup final. Well, certainly it's an entirely different time now in the organization. Gallagher's made several comments throughout the season about, what a rebuild could be like. That it'd be really hard to remove that, the competition factor and the winning factor. Obviously for some people, they have trouble and struggle to go through something like that when you're not winning consistently. And Stu Cowan goes on to write that it would make sense for Ken Hughes and company to maybe consider trying to find a trade for the Montreal veteran here who's been there a long time, been a real good soldier for them a long time. But it's fair to say, too, that this contract he has now is not working out real good. I mean, he's not having a good season at all offensively. Only has 6 goals. He hasn't even scored 20 goals in the last 2 years combined, he does have a couple of 30-goal seasons and 20-goal seasons on his resume from years past, but the last couple of years have been extremely tough on Brendan Gallagher. So from that perspective, you think Montreal would be interested in maybe moving on if they're able to. They might have to retain some salary. And might he end up going west to join his former center iceman, Phil Deneau, in LA? I mean, certainly the article goes on to suggest that Marc Bergevin, we know, loves Brendan Gallagher. He's the one that signed him to that contract. And what is he right now? Well, he is the new special advisor to GM Rob Blake in Los Angeles. So obviously, even though Gallagher's got in a somewhat unfavorable contract, I'm sure Bergevin would give him a glowing reference to Blake as a player they should consider obtaining. We know the chemistry he had with Phil Deneau. They were played together a long time and enjoyed a lot of success together. So that's, obviously a good start right off the bat. Montreal would have to retain salary. LA has all kinds of picks and prospects and other things they could offer Montreal in return, so that it did not necessarily have to take any money back contract-wise, which would be a big help too. We know that Montreal is going to be doing a lot of wheeling and dealing, and GM Ken Hughes and Jeff Gorton are going to have a lot of big deals possibly up their sleeve. Like I mentioned before, in recent weeks, we could see guys like Brendan Gallagher move. We could see Jonathan Drouin. Maybe Jake Allen or Carey Price moves. Like, there's several big trades I think we're going to see out of this franchise throughout the offseason. The offseason for the Montreal Canadiens, of course, will start in the very near future. Of course, they're not going to likely see too much until we get closer to June, July, before all teams are in the market here and able to make some moves here, and the market really heats up between some trades in the free agency, which we'll see in July. So certainly let me know your thoughts on Brendan Gallagher and his future in Montreal. Could this come to an end? It makes sense that he may not want to stick around for the rebuild. It makes a lot of sense that Montreal would not want that contract while they're going through the rebuild, and LA would be a great destination for him. Of course, like I said, they'd have to retain a fair bit of salary, but that might be better than having a full hit on the contract and the cap hit for the next 4, 5, 6 years. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.